Hello. Welcome back to Let's Talk Ray Bradbury. If you've not already subscribed to our channel, please do. So, as I'm recording this, we are just a few days after Christmas. The new year has not arrived, but I am now recording all videos for the new year because I'm determined to finally get through this Ray Bradbury collection in 2023. I promised to do it in 2022. Didn't happen, but we're going to give it another go. And to do that, we're going to bank some episodes beforehand. So today's tale is The Terrible Conflagration Up at the Place from 1969. It is story number 75 of 100 in the collection, The Stories of Ray Bradbury. The way these videos go is I give you a brief synopsis of what happens in the story, and then I wrap things up with just a few thoughts about what the story meant to me, what kind of lessons can be taken away from it. Is it one of the better Bradbury stories? So for the synopsis, this is another Dublin story by Ray Bradbury. In Ireland, one night drinking in a pub, 14 men cook up this idea they're going to go march out into the countryside and burn down the palace of the local lord. They march to the door and demand to be let in, realizing beforehand that they didn't even bother to bring matches, so it seems like these men's hearts really aren't in it. But it's a mob mentality. They convince themselves to go do this terrible act because they've heard stories of rebellion going on throughout the country and they want to get in on the action. Lord Kilgotten, the local lord, greets them at the door, but asks that they be quiet because his elderly wife is upstairs sleeping and needs her rest before they go into Dublin to watch the premiere of a new show. He lets them in, offers them drinks, but they insist they're here to burn down the place, and they're going to do it because of these rebellions, which they're not really a part of. They don't really understand, but they're determined to do their part as part of the local branch of the IRA. Lord Kilgotten, one by one, managed to convince these men that the paintings on his walls are priceless artifacts, and they are part of their heritage because they are Irish, and everything in Ireland is part of their heritage. So the men agreed to save the paintings. They come back the next day, begin hauling them away, and they are determined to come back that night at a scheduled time of 8 p.m. to burn down the house. One by one, the paintings go out the door, but one by one, they soon come back, except for one. Men get stuck in the mud. Some men hurt their backs. Another one takes a $500,000 priceless Renoir home to his wife, and she's not too happy about having these paintings on the walls of her little thatched hut, which just shows how ridiculous it is. So one by one, these paintings come back to their rightful place, go back up on the walls, all except for one. One of the men rushes out the door with a little painting done by Lord Kilgotten's wife. It's a portrait of him done by her. He doesn't seem to think too much of it, but they take that one out in the woods and leave it to die. Once again, Lord Kilgotten passes around the priceless brandy. They share drinks, and Kilgotten, almost hating to do it, asks one of the men, "Could you reach up there and adjust the painting above the fireplace?" It's a painting of the Battle of Troy. He actually can't remember whether it was the Battle of Troy or the Battle of Rome, but it's one of those. And all at once, 14 men, eager to be helpful, reach up there and try to help straighten the painting. So this is another very delightful, charming, comedic Irish story by Ray Bradbury. Famously, he spent time in Ireland writing, I think he was writing screenplay for Moby or something at the time, but he spent time there, and it inspired a handful of really sort of delightful, funny, quirky stories. And I quite like this one. The characters in the story all have Irish names, but I don't want to actually tell you any of the names because they're almost irrelevant. I think that's part of the point of the story. This is about the mob mentality and how people can overdrink, work themselves up to do sort of heinous acts, and that's sort of what happens. And these people are pretty nameless, despite a few of them actually having character names. But the characters all feel pretty much exactly the same, except for one who is a bit of more of a ringleader, but even he falls back into line. So that's why I'm not really getting into that detail. But yeah, this is a story about the Irish drinking culture, and at least the way that an American like Bradbury sees it. And I think there's some truth to it. The Irish here, they say there's more Irish people in America than there are in Ireland, and they sort of had that mentality as well. So I think it's a bit of a stereotype, but it also has a bit of a truth to it. And what's really going on here, though, is that I think Bradbury, sort of as an artist, is speaking to the idea of how when rebellion comes to a country, people have the unfortunate habit of sometimes destroying their own heritage in the process of seeking whatever freedoms or change or revolution they're after. And I think this is an interesting case of that crisis being averted. Kilgotten may be like an English lord or whatever, or at least at a higher, different class than the peasantry. But even he, sort of in his old age, realizes that, yes, I'm fortunate to have this position, but these paintings have been safe here for hundreds of years, and it is a bit of a museum. And his house is in fact almost a museum to an older way. He realizes that his sort of time is ending. He's an older man. I think they said 70s or 80s. Wife is obviously very elderly, and so it while talking about revolution in a violent way, it also speaks to the revolution of time, and in some sense, patience and a little bit of pressure can actually change things for the better without necessarily having to resort to destroying your own heritage. I think that's what this story is really about. I'm an American, 40 years old, born in 1982. Even when I was younger, there was still a little bit of sort of that Irish violence, Protestants versus Catholics, and I always thought a little bit. I felt it was a little bit odd. It seemed like it was a war whose purpose and time had passed, and it was dwindling, and it all seemed a little bit ridiculous to me because although, ancient origins of the British, the Irish, the Scottish, the Welsh there's many different sources, from Celtic, prehistory, to then the various invasions that came, and it really affected the evolution of these places. And then through modern times, I think to me it seems it's like, for me it would be Pennsylvania attacking New Jersey. It's like, what's the point? It's like you're more alike than you are different, despite your persistent differences and your grudges from the past. And it just makes sense that you should work together. And I think Bradbury might be saying a little bit something about that, how this little rebellion, as he was writing in 1969, seemed just a little bit ridiculous, a little bit past its prime, over the hill, and he was sort of poking a little bit of fun of it, but also speaking again to the importance of preserving art and not destroying your heritage, but your heritage itself is your strong point. So there it is, guys. The Terrible Conflagration Up at the Place, 1969, story number 75 of 100 in the collection The Stories of Ray Bradbury. Next up, we will be moving on to Night Call Collect from 1949. That will leave us just 24 stories to go in this project before we move on to something else here at Let's Talk. All right, thanks for tuning in, and I will see you again soon.